Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast, where we explore what it is to be a healthy spiritual man today. I'm Eamon. It's great to have you with us. Hello, I'm Eamon. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about the history of New Thought. So in the last video, we talked about spirituality and religion and kind of those differences. So I wanted to go into this spiritual philosophy of New Thought and share more about that. But first, let's take a breath and let's center a little bit here. Just take a few breaths with me. Just finding our centers, finding that wisdom, understanding and knowledge within ourselves. Okay, that's better. So this New Thought philosophy is amazing, and we'll talk more in future videos about the philosophy itself. But I wanted to start out with a little bit of the history of it. And it's a wonderful history, really. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So there's the early history, there's kind of the middle history, and then there's the more modern history of where we're at, and then where we're kind of currently at in this philosophy that has been going on for hundreds of years now. It's really taken from a lot of mystical teachings of religion, the more metaphysical, the more universal teachings of many religions, if not all, in some respects. But there is also a very specific philosophy around that, even though all of those pieces are a part of this philosophy. There is a very specific lineage that we kind of come from. So I think it's important to honor that lineage and those who have come before us and those who have helped this philosophy evolve and spiral upwards into the modern philosophy that it is today and continues to become and continues to evolve. So it's not done. One of the quotes that I love from Joseph Campbell is that the modern spirituality or modern philosophy, modern religion must address the modern experience and life of those who are currently living in that time, for those of us who are living it now. So naturally, it would evolve. I don't know that spirituality does do that so much. But this philosophy certainly does. And we'll talk more about that kind of at the end of the modern pieces. But let's go ahead and start. So this was, the 1800s, the late 1700s, early 1800s. Franz Mesmer, if you've ever heard of mesmerism or hypnosis, he is kind of one of the founding inspirations for New Thought. And Franz Mesmer, when he was going around and doing his tours on magnetism, and he was actually using magnets to help heal people, he thought, oh, this is the healing tool. And well, it turns out one day Anton Mesmer forgot to bring his magnets to a talk that he was doing. He went ahead and did the talk anyhow, and the healing that he had expected happened. And so it was kind of like a mind blower. And he's like, well, wait a minute, that shouldn't have happened, but yet it did. So he started to explore it, and he kind of was one of the early he came into an understanding of that the mind or the belief is what heals us. And so thusly started a chain of effects, of events and effects that would then move forward through up into our modern day. Franz Mesmer was kind of the original inspiration, and he inspired, and his teaching inspired Phineas Parkhurst Quimby around the 1840s. He was kind of the early founder of New Thought. He's kind of accredited with that. I think it's something that developed over time. So I don't know that anyone can be called necessarily the founder. I think there were many places in which there were many people who took it to the next level. But certainly with Quimby, through his mind healing and mind work, healing and hypnosis that he did, he was very impactful on many people's lives. Emanuel Swedenborg, Warren Evans, Charles Patterson, and Prentice Mulford. You know, they had amazing contributions to the New Thought philosophy, as well as Quimby's son, Horatio, who wrote down a lot of his father's work and shared a lot of that wisdom. Now, there were others, many others, and Ralph Waldo Emerson is also kind of a contributor to the philosophy through his writings and through his poetry and inspiration. There were many metaphysical teachings that, were influencing, that influenced many of these early founders. So we just want to honor all those writers, all those thinkers, all those contributors, all those supporters who helped create this wonderful and unique wisdom. We just really appreciate that. So Phineas Parkhurst Quimby had a woman come to him who was struggling with, I believe it was tuberculosis, TB, Mary Baker Eddy. And she was healed by Quimby, even though she kind of denied it for a while. Ultimately, they found out that, yes, she indeed did see him and was healed by him. And so this philosophy came through or grew through Mary Baker Eddy because she's the founder of Christian Science. Now, Christian Science is not a part of the New Thought philosophy. It kind of has a lot of absolutist beliefs, things like, and I'm not sure the entirety of these. I haven't studied Christian Science, but it is a part of our history. And so I want to acknowledge that. Some of those beliefs are that the only healing is through spiritual healing. So the modern day Christian Scientists have places where people go and they do prayer healing, they do mental healing with them, but they don't do any kind of other modern healing. They don't see doctors, they don't take medications, none of that kind of stuff. So some of that type of absolutism, this is the only way, comes from Mary Baker Eddy. She was very much that way, and understandably so. Like, if you can imagine the 1800s, early 1900s, in a time where there wasn't equal rights, women were not held to the same standard as men or to the same stature as men. And so, can you imagine Mary Baker Eddy creating this movement of Christian Science at that time, being a spiritual leader? I think you'd have to have an iron will to be able to do that, and that kind of seems like, according to history, sort of the person that she was. So, we just honor her for that and for her tenacity. Now, she had many, many students, many of which who at the time were standing for equal rights and were writers and contributors and supporters of the women's suffrage movement. So this philosophy really does have a founding in this liberation kind of philosophy or liberation belief, in that we are, in and of ourselves, we are deserving because we are whole human beings, regardless of race or gender or sexual orientation, any of these things that in some respects seem kind of ridiculous because we're all human beings, right? We're 99% the same. But anyhow, I wanted to acknowledge that Mary Baker Eddy and then Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was one of her later students, was, I guess, just a brilliant woman and helped take this philosophy to the next level. She is called the teacher of teachers. And because she taught so many people in the New Thought tradition. And I think eventually Mary Baker Eddy kicked Emma Curtis Hopkins out. She kicked a lot of people out of her philosophy. So Emma Curtis Hopkins then was free to kind of explore more of what her philosophy was. And she founded her own college, the College of Mystical Science. I believe it's called the Emma Hopkins College of Mystical Science at the time, where she taught many, many people, including Malinda Cramer, the Fillmores, and Ernest Holmes. Many, many more than that. But for our purposes today, we're just going to kind of go into those. So Malinda Cramer was the founder of Divine Science, which is one of kind of three of the middle history. So now we're kind of starting to move into the middle history of New Thought. So that was the early history up to Emma Curtis Hopkins. And now the middle history of New Thought kind of begins with Malinda Cramer and Nona Brooks. And when they founded Divine Science, they had taken Emma Curtis Hopkins' philosophy and put it into a community, into the community form, and we're teaching classes, and it was around healing. If you can imagine, back in those days, doctors, in the early 1900s, 1800s, doctoring wasn't the same at all as it is today, not nearly close. They were still, kind of even dealing with probably the early days of that, doing leeches and, holes in the head to let the bad spirits out, stuff like that. So you can imagine people were turning to alternative forms of healing. And that's really, it is a healing philosophy. This is at its foundation, it really is not only a liberation philosophy and liberating us from our current consciousness, our current states of being, but a healing consciousness. And of course, those two tie together, because if we're stuck in a I am sick belief system, then we have to change that thinking to be able to help heal, and the mind-body connection. So Malinda Cramer and Nona Brooks were some of the early founders of centers called Divine Science. Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, I think Myrtle was the more kind of spiritually inclined, and Charles was more the business inclined. They founded Unity churches. They founded Unity Church, which turned into Unity Churches, and now is Unity Worldwide Ministries. They're more Christian-oriented, as were the Fillmores at the time. So they're more focused on the Bible, teachings of Jesus, the Christian philosophy and how to look at it in a metaphysical way. Um, Maybe less these days, but more so when their original founding was happened. Then at one point they created Unity Village in Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, and it's a wonderful place, still thriving, growing, and supporting this New Thought movement um, still this day. One of the later and a lot of people that came through Emma Curtis Hopkins College of Mystical Science, many more than just these three, but the last of which, who was Ernest Holmes. In 1927, Ernest kind of created the Science of Mind and Spirit philosophy. That organization is now called the Centers for Spiritual Living. And the three of these are kind of the main foundational pieces of modern New Thought, of the modern New Thought movement and the modern New Thought philosophy. Now, there were a few others afterwards. There was also Rabbi Alfred Moses, who created the Society for Jewish Science, and a Japanese version. Oh boy, here we go. Si Sho no Le. Sisho no Le. It's probably not right, but that's as close as I'm going to get. Masaharu Masaharu Taniguchi. Okay. Again, neurodiverse. Uh, You'll probably not get accurate, but explore for yourself if you're interested. Hopefully, you're laughing with me and not at me. Which has actually, I think, over 1 million followers in Japan still to this day, which is super amazing. And, kind of all of this is happening like the 1800s, the 1830s, 40s. And again, that practice of mental healing was needed, and people were seeking this out because doctors weren't they didn't have the science, the technology that they have today, obviously. It was still an evolving science and an evolving understanding, and they didn't have cures for everything. So many people sought this philosophy out through that, or because of that, because they needed healing in some form or another. So now we kind of move on to more the modern history of New Thought. And along with kind of the 1950s, the civil rights movement, this philosophy really gained a lot of momentum, especially in Black communities. And it supported equal rights and this liberation for all, this liberation philosophy. So it really expanded in some amazing and beautiful ways, and we'll go into that. Reverend Ike and Johnnie Colemon, and even some modern people in the movement. But there also was an offshoot. New Thought has influenced many things throughout its short history. So it is well known for its prosperity teaching. That influenced many individuals, such as Norman Vincent Peale, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, and many others at the time, and thusly influenced me. I found out maybe 10 years ago now that my grandfather, who I'm named after, was his book that he had on the side of his bed was Norman Vincent Peale's book on positive thinking. And I love this. My mom actually gave me the copy that he had sitting on his side table that he would read at night. And I can't help but think, as for me, as I look at my lineage and we look at our lineages, of the intention in some way that he set for me to find this New Thought philosophy. I was raised Catholic, and my mom was very Catholic. And so I had to, jump outside of the norm. And I'm sure my grandfather was very Christian as well. But I think the influence of this philosophy came into my life, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So it was a little side story of my own history in finding this New Thought movement for me. But let's go back to Reverend Ike. He was called the Green Preacher in kind of the 1960s and 70s because he was really a part of that prosperity gospel, especially in the Black community in Harlem and other places over time. But that's where he got his start. And he also influenced some other people like Johnnie Colemon, who was the founder of the Universal Foundation for Better Living. She founded that in 1974 and is still a thriving and amazing movement that is going on today that is a part of this New Thought philosophy and New Thought movement. So we have had influences that have increased and that have bettered this philosophy over time by adding more to it and more diversity and more expansion and deeper understanding. And of course, these are just a few of the ministers who along the way have helped this New Thought philosophy grow. So we want to honor all of them. And there's probably thousands and thousands of ministers that have helped grow this philosophy along the way, along its path and journey as it continues to grow. So one of the more modern ministers that I want to mention is Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, who created Agape Spiritual Center in California. And he's kind of the rock star, New Thought rock star minister. He's been in the movies What the Bleep, and as well as The Secret, and has been an instrumental person in helping found some of our different organizations, the AGNT, Association for Global New Thought, along with Roger Teal, who was my personal minister for over 25 years until he retired a little while back. And so want to honor him. And Mile High Church here in Lakewood, Colorado, that is still growing and thriving with Michelle Madrano and Josh Reeves as the co-senior ministers. So we have a long, amazing lineage and understanding of this movement and of why it has grown and how it has grown through its prosperity teachings, through its liberation philosophy, theology, to help us realize the control, the influence, the co-creative experience that we have that is in our own nature, that we get to say, hey, in our co-creation with the energy of life, with the cosmos, as I would call it, we're able to then choose, right? I think that's one of the greatest things that we have as human beings is our freedom of choice. In any given moment, we have the opportunity to change simply by making a different choice, right? And making a different choice means that we need a new thought, that we need something to inspire us, something to move us off of the old path of the doctor said I'm sick, into this path of healing. Now, that's not saying that the mental science of healing and even the feeling experience of healing, I think it's all of that. The spiritual understanding that we are healed, whole, perfect and complete, that on a foundational level, um, we are this divine life. We are this divine expression that moves in, through, and as us. And so I think it's important. And I think here is where the effectiveness of the intention, the healing, Ernest Holmes called it treatment, a spiritual mind treatment, to change that belief system, um, that internal understanding, and even that habitualized internal understanding, right? As we go back to even Anton Mesmer and hypnotherapy, and to the unconscious mind, and how much that influences our conscious experience. So all of these beliefs that we have, that have been built over time through our history, through our ancestry, through DNA in some respects, through our family of origin, our parents, our upbringing, all the influences of that. So to a degree, nature, through science, through our DNA, but also nurture through what we learn and what we grow. That is what creates our belief systems, what we experience, what we see, what we feel, what we intuitively know. I think there is, when we look at a child, at a baby, they're so like open and receptive. And that's such a beautiful thing. But then over time, we put these layerings of our own belief systems, even unconsciously, through energy. I think we're far more energetically connected than we realize. And that transmission of energy between parent and child, of how do I act? How am I to be? Now, of course, there is the uniqueness within that. Everyone is their own original individual and person. And those influences have certainly a lot of influence, especially when it comes to our safety and survival, right? As a child, we're like, okay, I better not go against my parents on this. And for me, that was my Catholic upbringing. I better not go against my mom uh, against this Catholic thing, because she believes it through and through. And if I say, hey, I don't believe this, then uh, she might withdraw her love, or might withdraw her support, you know, and that's a fundamental fear. I think that, am I going to be taken care of if I have beliefs outside that don't match the family belief system, that don't match the family system? I think sometimes that's why it can be so hard to change your belief systems in a family system, because it's like the crabs in the barrel, right? Nobody wants you to rock the boat. We don't want you to crawl out of the bucket. So the other crabs will pull the crab that's almost out back down into the bucket, because it's that level of comfort. It's that level of understanding of what we believe. This is who we are on some level. It is that belief system. And so, yeah, I guess moving into a little bit of the New Thought philosophy and New Thought beliefs, and how those form and how those express. And so, if we want to create a new thought, back to our foundational experience here, if we want to create a new thought, or it's imperative to create a new thought, or to have a new thought, to create a new paradigm, create a new experience for yourself. This is a foundational piece of this philosophy is, and Ernest Holmes would say it like this: change your thinking, change your life, right? Because when we do change our thinking, we change our life. Now, Ernest Holmes was alive until the 1960s. I think he passed in 1960. So he was one of the later kind of founders of New Thought. He was very much into looking at the world, the religions, the world belief systems, and trying to incorporate a lot of those. Even though he was founded and raised in Christianity, And a lot of his early philosophy was around that Christian belief system. But as he grew older and explored more, and I really love him for this, he would take from Hinduism, he would take from Buddhism, he would read the Upanishads, he would try and seek out these more Eastern philosophies. And I think he had met Yogananda at one point in time in California when he was there. And so I think he was wanting to expand beyond just Christianity, but to Judaism and Islamic faith and all of the world's religions, because he knew on that foundational level, on that metaphysical level beyond the physical, there was a foundational understanding, and he called it the golden thread of truth through all religions or through all paths. And I love that about him. I love that he brought that in because it's this new thought philosophy is founded in, Christianity. That was by the overwhelming religion of the day. And so it was the only kind of way that people could start to understand this more metaphysical view of life rather than this religious view of life. And so one of Ernest Holmes' other quotes was "Be open at the top," and so he did that, and he explored, and he brought a lot of different philosophy, a lot of different spiritual understanding and mystical and metaphysical understanding of world religions into especially the science of mind and spirit philosophy, or the Centers for Spiritual Living is the organization around that. But I think over time, a lot of the current movement and even some of the more modern history, but a lot of the current movement really incorporates a lot of this stuff. Mindfulness, compassion practices, forgiveness. I mean, of course, that's been a part of probably every world religion at this point. But so many of the Eastern philosophies have been brought into this. And the New Thought philosophy has influenced a lot of, if not all, I can't find, I haven't found, at least the books that I've read, and I haven't read them all for sure, but the influence of the New Thought philosophy over the self-help writers of the modern age, including Wayne Dyer, Stephen Covey, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Eckhart Tolle, Neil Donald Walsh, and so many others that have been a part of this self-help movement that has really flourished over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So I really appreciate all of those writers being able to help expand the understanding of this philosophy and really find our place of empowerment. I think religion had, and again, this is an evolutionary thing. Spirituality or religion was a necessary part of us evolving into spirituality and this deeper understanding of our individual experience and our individual expression of our understanding and our relationship to the divine, to God, if you want to use that or say that. I tend to not use that because it's a bit of a loaded word. So, I use a lot of different ones like the luminous beings that we are. I love Yoda, of course, these luminous beings that we are. And the universal life force energy that is in, through, and as all things. This consciousness that gives awareness to all life. The divine, you'll hear me say different things like that. So those are more along my beliefs, just due to my own upbringing in the Catholic faith, Christian faith, that really limited what my idea of God was. And so for me, it's been a process of expanding that even beyond what I can conceive, and even up into some of the modern wonderful writers and philosophers and scientists, um, of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And of course, he was a kind of I don't know if you can call him a devotee of Carl Sagan, but a fan certainly, and an inspired by Carl Sagan. I love to watch the movie Cosmos, or the series Cosmos, and he did a wonderful job of updating the one that Carl Sagan did, from the 70s into our modern era, and bringing all the modern wisdom up to it. Neil deGrasse Tyson, so just grateful for that. The New Thought movement does believe in evolution, does believe in science, evolution in the sense of, and it's sad that we have to explain this, but that we come from a single-celled organism, and grew over time and evolved over time into these beings over millions and millions and millions of years. And so I love that about our philosophy. I love that it's not like this magical thinking that poof, all of a sudden, oh, God created all these things and then poof, created human beings. There it is, just poof. That's not the way our world works. And it's definitely not in alignment with science. And I get why religion is in opposition to science, which is a sad thing. For us, it's not in opposition. It's in alignment with it. So I'm so grateful for that, because I couldn't sacrifice my mind and this way that, by testing things over and over again, which is why you see so much the divine science, the science of mind and spirit, science in this movement, is because it is referencing that. The processes have been repeated over and over again. The healing processes have been repeated over and over again. In fact, Ernest Holmes said, don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself and see if it works. And so he's throwing down the law. He's like, hey, and maybe your belief isn't in alignment with allowing yourself to have that healing, which is fine. I think a lot of people who come from traditional religions believe that they have to surrender to some higher force of a priest or a rabbi or imam or someone else who can tell them what the teaching is or what the philosophy is, or help them heal. And that's very much religion. Spirituality is very much you are empowered to do it yourself. There is no intermediary between you and this powerful force that has created everything, literally, that has created the cosmos, that creates the multiverse, that created our universe and our local group and our our Milky Way galaxy and our local planet Earth, our local solar system, Earth's solar system, and the planet Earth, and everything on it. And that this has taken time and developed over time. I love that first video from Cosmos where it shows the calendar and the immensity and the little dot that we are on in just the corner. And this is all of humanity. It's a little spot on this evolution of this 14 billion years evolution of this particular universe. And how amazing is that we get to go through all of that to get to this place of being these self-reflective, intelligent, conscious beings that we are today. And that came from the ocean, that came from the natural process, the creative process that is bound by laws, that is bound by science. And paradoxically, and here's where we get into quantum physics and all the other kinds of newer science that are trying to bridge that gap with spirituality and our connection with this universe. So the science and the soul, bringing those two together. So there are many communities around the world who subscribe to the New Thought philosophy that I just want to acknowledge and give our appreciation to the many ministers, practitioners, subscribers to this uplifting and empowering philosophy over the last 100 or so or more years that have helped shape and expand this understanding, and even going into our very modern times, our current modern times of, like I said, quantum physics, neurobiology, and those studies, the study of the brain and how that works, the study of the body, modern psychology, health and excellence, wisdom, and all of those people who are studying that excellence within us and how do we unleash the excellence. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff. To really create this bright future, this optimal beingness that is, this wisdom and this understanding that we have always strived to support, to grow, and to empower. And that's the amazing thing of this philosophy, as it does and is evolving. And so we don't want to remain stagnant. We want to honor our history and honor all of these amazing people who have brought this philosophy to consciousness. If you consider what this name represents, new thought, right? And having and creating a new thought in our lives. It is new possibility. It is new direction. It is inspired thinking. It is optimistic possibilities. And many possibilities, not just a choice between either or, but a multitude of possibilities. Having a new thought represents the evolution and the innovation of forward-thinking beings that we are, who have pushed the boundaries of human consciousness and human possibility. And that we continue to strive for that next evolution, the next solution, the next healing, the next awareness to what we as humans and we as humankind can create. So there you go. I got a little bit of the philosophy in there, but it was a joy to share the history of the New Thought philosophy with you today. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's take a minute to kind of close out and just take a breath to just relax and take in this wisdom for what it's worth to you. And I continue and urge you to explore it. And we'll continue to make videos on the philosophy and what it is and how it works and what it does and how you can be a part of that. So just take a breath. One of our practices is gratitude, right? I'm just thankful for this time. I'm thankful for you taking this time out of your day to be with me and to learn more about the New Thought philosophy. I'm grateful for this philosophy and all that have helped support it and promote it and help it become and continue to become its fullest potential that it can impact us as human beings and evolve our consciousness even more, evolve us even more, to find the solutions that are needed to this modern world, the support and the healings, and ultimately the love and blessings to this world that I want to be a part of, and that I think most of us want to be a part of, to be able to serve this world and serve the future of this world with optimism and hope and excitement. We'll take another breath and feel this relaxed state. So this is the state of being. This is the feeling state of ease and grace, of peace and love that we need to find more and more in our modern society, as busy and frustrating and invasive as it can be, to find time to take these personal moments to center and ground in that which we truly are, this divine self, this luminous self. And so it is. So thank you for joining me today. Until next time, we'll see you. I hope you enjoyed this interview from the New Thought Men's podcast. For instant access to all podcast interviews, talks from our summit, men's groups, and so much more, join us at newthoughtmens.community. Thanks so much for being with us today. There's more to come, so stay tuned in.